The massive doors of Transport Bay 7 hissed open as the military shuttle Iron Eagle touched down on New Terra Colony's bustling spaceport. Steam rose from the ship's hull as atmospheric processes worked to cool the vessel after its long journey through the void of space. General Kwame Davis stepped onto the loading platform, his boots echoing against the metal grating as he surveyed the crowded terminal ahead. Davis had just returned from a top-secret mission on Kepler 442b, where he'd been negotiating with the crystal-based Zephyrian species about mining rights in the Outer Rim territories. The mission had taken 3 weeks, and exhaustion weighed heavy on his shoulders. His usually pristine military uniform was packed away in his travel bag. Operational security demanded he travel in civilian clothes to avoid drawing attention from potential enemy agents or mercenaries who might target high-ranking Earth officials. The spaceport buzzed with the controlled chaos of interstellar commerce. Cargo haulers, guided by robotic assistants, moved containers filled with rare minerals from the Andromeda sector. Alien traders from the peaceful Aquarian Federation discussed water purification technology with human engineers. Children pressed their faces against the observation windows, watching as a massive freight ship from the Titan mining colonies slowly descended through the artificial atmosphere dome. Davis pulled his simple grey jacket tighter around his broad frame and began walking through the main concourse. Around him, holographic advertisements flickered in multiple languages: Standard Earth English, Centauri Common, and the flowing script of the Botanical Collective. The air recyclers hummed quietly, mixing the scents of different worlds: the metallic tang of processed asteroid minerals, the sweet fragrance of Venusian orchids, and the ozone smell of the massive energy shields protecting the colony. Officer Ryan Brooks stood at his assigned position near the main exit, his colonial security uniform still crisp despite being 4 hours into his shift. At 23 years old, Brooks had only been on New Terra Colony for 8 months, transferred from a quiet agricultural station on Europa, where the biggest excitement had been the occasional mechanical malfunction in the hydroponic farms. His training had been rushed. The colony needed security personnel quickly. As trade increased and more ships arrived daily, carrying everything from scientific equipment to families seeking new lives among the stars. Brooks watched the crowd with nervous energy, his hand resting on his plasma pistol's grip. The weapon was standard issue for colonial security, powerful enough to stop a charging Rigelian war beast, but with adjustable settings to avoid unnecessary casualties. His supervisor had warned him about staying alert for suspicious activity, especially after recent reports of smugglers trying to move illegal bioweapons through civilian transport hubs. When Brooks spotted Davis walking with confident, measured steps toward the exit, something triggered his poorly trained instincts. The man moved like someone with purpose, someone who belonged in command. His posture was too straight, his awareness too sharp for an ordinary civilian. Brooks had been taught to watch for these signs, but his inexperience made him see threats where none existed. Davis approached the security checkpoint, reaching into his jacket's inner pocket for his military identification card. The motion was smooth and deliberate. He'd done it thousands of times before at countless checkpoints across human space. The ID card contained his full credentials, security clearances, and a quantum-encrypted signature that would immediately identify him to any properly equipped scanner. But Brooks saw only a tall, athletic man reaching inside his jacket in what appeared to be a threatening manner. His heart rate spiked as adrenaline flooded his system. All those training simulations about hidden weapons and surprise attacks flashed through his mind in a split second of panic. "Stop right there! Hands where I can see them!" Brooks shouted, his voice cracking slightly as he drew his plasma pistol and aimed it directly at Davis's chest. The weapon's targeting system activated with a soft electronic whine, and a thin, red laser sight appeared on the general's jacket. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The bustling spaceport fell silent, as if someone had activated a sound dampener. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Children stopped running. Even the automated cargo systems seemed to pause in their mechanical routines. Every eye in the terminal turned toward the confrontation unfolding near the main exit. Civilians scattered like startled birds, some diving behind cargo containers, while others pressed themselves against the walls. A Centauri diplomat pulled his younglings close, his forearms creating a protective barrier. Human families grabbed their luggage and moved quickly toward the far exits, not wanting to be caught in potential crossfire. Davis slowly raised his hands, his movements deliberate and non-threatening. His dark eyes remained calm and steady, meeting Brooks's panicked gaze without anger or fear. Decades of military experience had taught him how to de-escalate dangerous situations, and he recognized the terror in the young officer's eyes. This wasn't malice, but inexperience and poor training. Neither man realized they stood at the center of what would become a turning point in colonial history, witnessed by hundreds of humans and aliens alike, recorded by dozens of security cameras, and destined to reshape how humanity protected its heroes across the galaxy. Staff Sergeant Kim Dae-ho had been pretending to examine exotic fruits at a Venusian vendor stall when the situation exploded into chaos. His enhanced combat implants, standard issue for elite marine protection details, immediately analyzed the threat level as Brooks raised his plasma weapon toward General Davis. The implants fed tactical data directly into his visual cortex: wind speed, crowd density, potential escape routes, and most importantly, the exact angle needed for a clean takedown. Kim's fingers moved to the microcommunicator embedded behind his ear, a device so small it looked like a simple hearing aid. To casual observers, the quantum-encrypted channel connected him instantly to his team, scattered throughout the spaceport's different levels and sections. Contact, hostile targeting the general. Kim's voice was barely above a whisper, but the urgency cut through the comm channel like a laser blade. Code red intervention required. All units converge on main exit. Non-lethal takedown authorized. The response was immediate and devastating in its efficiency. Across the terminal, Corporal Park Jin-woo had been monitoring the arrival screens, while disguised as a traveling businessman. His artificial briefcase contained enough non-lethal weapons to handle a small riot, all disguised as common electronic devices. The moment Kim's voice crackled through his earpiece, Park dropped his civilian cover and began moving. Meanwhile, Private Lee Soo-jin had been positioned on the upper observation deck, her sniper training allowing her to track multiple targets simultaneously through the crowd below. Her modified plasma rifle, broken down into components that looked like camera equipment, could be assembled in under 8 seconds. But the situation called for close-quarters intervention, not long-range solutions. The three Marines moved like synchronized dancers performing a deadly ballet. Years of training on the brutal combat worlds of the Proxima system had forged them into a single fighting unit. They'd fought alongside General Davis against the mechanical armies of the Rogue AI Collective in the Vega sector. They'd seen him lead desperate charges against the insectoid swarms of the Hive worlds. There was no way they'd let some panicked colonial security guard harm the man who'd saved half the galaxy. Kim approached Brooks from behind, his footsteps silent on the polished metal floor despite his combat boots. His movement was so smooth that not even the sensitive motion detectors used by the spaceport's security system registered his approach. The general public saw nothing unusual, just another passenger walking through the terminal. But to trained eyes, Kim moved with the lethal grace of Earth's finest warriors. Around them, the diverse crowd of the spaceport watched in frozen fascination. A group of Alteran traders, their blue-scaled skin shimmering under the artificial lights, had stopped their negotiations to observe the unfolding drama. Their species had fought alongside humans against the void predators, and they recognized the disciplined movements of Earth's military elite. A family of refugees from the mining colonies of Kepler 186F huddled together, their children's eyes wide with fear and curiosity. The automated systems of the spaceport began responding to the crisis. Security drones, small flying robots equipped with crowd control systems, descended from their charging stations in the ceiling, but they moved slowly, programmed for ordinary disturbances rather than military-grade interventions. By the time they reached the scene, the situation would already be resolved one way or another. Colonial security. Lower your weapon immediately. Kim's voice cut through the tense silence like a plasma blade through steel. His tone carried the authority of someone who'd given orders in the heat of interstellar warfare. You are threatening. a senior military officer of the Earth Defense Forces. Brooks spun around, his training telling him to keep his weapon aimed at the perceived threat, while his instincts screamed warnings about the new voice behind him. His plasma pistol wavered between Davis and Kim, the targeting laser dancing across, both men as his panic increased. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the climate-controlled environment of the spaceport, but Brooks never had a chance to make a choice. Park had already moved into position, his approach masked by a group of Centauri merchants, whose forearms were perfect for creating visual cover. The takedown was textbook perfect, a pressure point strike that shut down Brooks's nervous system for exactly 2.3 seconds, long enough to disarm him, but not long enough to cause permanent damage. The plasma pistol flew from Brooks's nerveless fingers in a perfect arc. Lee, who had descended from the upper level using emergency maintenance ladders hidden behind decorative panels, caught the weapon with reflexes enhanced by zero-gravity combat training. Her movements were so fluid that several alien observers later reported seeing her appear to teleport across the terminal floor. Kim's restraint systems were military-grade but designed for minimum discomfort. The energy bonds that held Brooks were the same technology used to safely transport prisoners of war without causing injury. Brooks found himself unable to move, but completely unharmed, held in a field of soft blue light that felt warm against his skin. The entire operation had taken 4 7/10 seconds from start to finish. The spaceport security cameras, recording at standard civilian rates, barely captured the Marine's movements as distinct actions. To most observers, it appeared as if Brooks had simply frozen in place, while his weapon somehow flew into the hands of a woman who hadn't been there moments before. General Davis slowly lowered his hands, his expression showing no trace of fear or anger. His eyes met each of his protectors in turn, conveying gratitude and respect without words. These Marines had followed him through battles across a dozen star systems, and their loyalty was absolute. "Outstanding response, Sergeant," Davis said, quietly, his voice carrying easily across the now silent terminal. The words were simple, but they carried the weight of a commander who understood the value of the warriors who stood ready to die for him. Brooks sat motionless in the energy restraints, his mind racing as the reality of his situation began to sink in. The soft blue glow of the containment field hummed quietly around him, and for the first time since drawing his weapon, he had a moment to actually look at the man he'd been pointing it at. General Kwame Davis stood with the bearing of someone who'd commanded fleets in the depths of space, his calm demeanor more intimidating than any show of anger could have been. The spaceport's central computer system had already begun its automatic threat assessment protocols. Within 30 seconds of the Marines' intervention, high-resolution footage of the entire incident was uploaded to the Colonial Network's secure servers. The quantum-encrypted data streams carried the video at light speed to every major administrative center in the outer colonies, and from there to Earth Command itself. Administrator Park Sun-Young was reviewing shipping manifests in her office, overlooking the spaceport, when her emergency communicator erupted with priority alerts. The holographic display showed her the incident in real time, and her face went white as snow when the computer's facial recognition systems identified the man who'd been threatened. She knocked over her cup of Centauri tea as she scrambled to reach the elevator, her hands shaking as she punched the emergency descent code. General Davis wasn't just any military officer. He was the architect of the famous Battle of Kepler 452b, where his tactical genius had turned certain defeat into humanity's greatest victory against the mechanical collective. When the rogue artificial intelligences had launched their war machines against the peaceful farming colonies of the Outer Rim, Davis had been the one to develop the electromagnetic pulse tactics that disabled their robotic armies without harming the human settlers caught in the crossfire. His name was carved into monuments on 17 different worlds. The crystal gardens of New Aurora bore his likeness, grown from living gemstones by the grateful crystalline communion after he'd protected their homeworld from the acidic storms of the corrosive fleet. Children across the galaxy learned about his mercy toward defeated enemies and his refusal to target civilian populations, even when it would have been tactically advantageous. Most importantly, Davis had been the key negotiator in humanity's alliance with the Centauri Federation. When the proud warrior species had first encountered Earth's expanding colonies, tensions had nearly erupted into a devastating interstellar war. Davis had spent 3 years learning their culture, their honor codes, and their complex social hierarchies. His patient diplomacy had transformed potential enemies into humanity's strongest allies, opening trade routes that had made the outer colonies prosperous and secure. The automated news networks of the colonial communication grid picked up the story within minutes. Artificial intelligence reporters, programmed to recognize significant events, began broadcasting alerts across the faster-than-light communication networks that connected human space. The footage spread like wildfire through social media platforms, discussion forums, and official government channels. On the distant mining station orbiting Proxima Centauri, Captain Chen Wei-Ming watched the footage during his lunch break and nearly choked on his synthesized protein bar. He'd served under Davis during the siege of Titan Base, where the general had risked his own life to evacuate wounded Marines, while the Void Predator's plasma cannons reduced the station to molten metal around them. The story reached the diplomatic quarters of New Geneva, humanity's capital world, where Ambassador Torres was hosting a reception for visiting dignitaries from the Aquatic Collective. The squid-like aliens watched the footage with their large, intelligent eyes, their tentacles rippling with what their species displayed as concern. They had fought alongside Davis against the planet-consuming swarms of the Locust Armada, and they understood the significance of what they were witnessing. But nowhere was the impact more significant than on Altair Prime, the crown jewel of the proud Alteran Federation. Ambassador Kethavar, whose forearms were currently folded in the traditional pose of deep contemplation, studied the footage on the massive curved screen in his private chambers. His blue-scaled skin seemed to darken as he processed what he was seeing. 2 years earlier, Davis had saved Kethavar's entire species from extinction. The Void Raiders, a nomadic fleet of energy beings that consumed entire planets for fuel, had targeted Altair Prime for harvesting. The planet's 12 billion inhabitants faced certain death until Davis arrived with a combined human-Centauri fleet. His innovative strategy of using solar mirrors to redirect the system's star energy had literally burned the Void Raiders from space, sending them fleeing back to the dark regions between the galaxies. Kethavar activated his quantum communication, Aresi, the device's crystalline components glowing with stored solar energy from Altair's twin suns. The message he transmitted would reach Earth Command within hours, but its implications would last for decades. Honored allies of Earth, his translated words appeared on screens across human space. We have witnessed disturbing footage from your new Terra colony. If this is how your people treat the greatest protector in galactic history, we must question whether our alliance serves the cause of justice and honor. The message continued, each word carefully chosen to convey the depth of Alteran concern, without yet severing diplomatic ties. General Davis saved our world, our children, our future itself. That one of your own would threaten him with violence suggests a sickness in your society that we cannot ignore. We await your response and your actions to remedy this situation. Similar messages began arriving from across the galaxy. The Botanical Collective, whose plant-based intelligence had been saved from a genetically engineered plague by Davis's quick thinking, sent formal protests through their photosynthetic communication networks. The silicon-based miners of the asteroid belt transmitted their concerns through the quantum resonance frequencies they used to communicate across the void. Administrator Park finally reached the spaceport floor, her usually perfect administrative uniform wrinkled from her hasty descent. She took one look at the scene, the general standing calmly despite having been threatened, the Marines maintaining perfect discipline, and the security officer who'd created this diplomatic catastrophe still glowing blue in his restraints. "Sir, I cannot apologize enough for this incident," she said, bowing so deeply that her forehead nearly touched the polished floor. The gesture was borrowed from ancient Earth customs, but its sincerity was unmistakable. The entire colonial administration takes full responsibility for this inexcusable failure. But even as she spoke, both she and General Davis understood that apologies alone would not be enough. Across the galaxy, humanity's carefully built network of alliances was straining under the weight of this single moment of prejudice and poor training. Years of diplomatic progress hung in the balance, all because one young man had seen a threat where none existed, letting fear and assumptions guide his actions instead of proper protocol and respect for those who had sacrificed everything. And to keep the galaxy safe, the colonial courthouse of New Terra Colony had never hosted such an important gathering. Built from gleaming titanium steel composites and enhanced crystal panels that could withstand asteroid impacts, the building now buzzed with activity as representatives from across human space arrived for the tribunal. The main courtroom, normally used for settling trade disputes and minor colonial infractions, had been expanded with temporary seating to accommodate the dozens of observers who'd traveled light years to witness the proceedings. Outside the courthouse, news crews from 17 different worlds set up their quantum broadcasting equipment. Robotic camera units floated through the air like metallic dragonflies, their sensors recording every angle of the historic event. The Centauri News Network had sent their most experienced war correspondent, a four-armed reporter who'd covered the liberation of the Titan mining colonies. Even the peaceful Botanical Collective had grown specialized communication pods to relay the proceedings back to their forest worlds. Inside the courtroom, Brooks sat at the defendant's table, wearing a standard colonial uniform, stripped of all rank insignia. His lawyer, a sharp-minded advocate named Chen Ho-seok, had arrived from Earth's legal capital specifically for this case. The young officer's hands trembled slightly as he faced the panel of judges, 3 human military officers, 1 Centauri honor warrior, and 1 representative from the Silicon Mining Guild, whose crystal-based thought processes were considered the most impartial in the galaxy. The courtroom's holographic display systems showed the incident from 17 different angles, captured by security cameras, personal recording devices, and even the enhanced vision implants of several alien witnesses. Every movement, every word, every split-second decision had been analyzed and enhanced for perfect clarity. The footage played in slow motion, showing Brooks drawing his weapon, the Marine's lightning-fast response, and General Davis's calm reaction. Throughout the crisis, General Davis took the witness stand with the same quiet dignity he'd shown throughout his military career. His dress uniform, decorated with medals from conflicts across the galaxy, caught the artificial sunlight streaming through the courthouse's transparent aluminum windows. But when he spoke, his words carried no anger or desire for revenge. "This incident reveals a critical failure in our training systems," Davis testified, his voice carrying clearly through the courtroom's acoustic enhancement systems. "Officer Brooks is not our enemy. He is a symptom of a larger problem that threatens the very foundations of our galactic alliances." The general's testimony lasted 2 hours, during which he detailed the complex web of relationships that held human space together. He explained how trust between species had been built through decades of shared sacrifice, how every diplomatic breakthrough had cost lives and resources that could never be recovered. His words painted a picture of a galaxy where humanity's reputation for honor and competence was their most valuable asset. "We cannot allow ignorance and prejudice to threaten the bonds we've built with our allies," Davis continued, gesturing toward the Centauri observer, whose blue-scaled face remained impassive but whose 4 eyes tracked every word. "When we fail to recognize our own heroes, we signal to the galaxy that we don't value the sacrifices made in humanity's name." Major Kim So-young, the colony's military liaison, stood before the tribunal with a comprehensive reform package already prepared. Her presentation included holographic blueprints for new training facilities, updated recognition protocols, and a galaxy-wide database that would instantly identify any Earth military personnel regardless of their current assignment or appearance. "Every colonial security officer will undergo mandatory recognition training," Kim announced, her words being simultaneously translated into 47 different languages for the interstellar broadcast. This training will include not just faces and ranks, but the histories and achievements of those who have served humanity across the stars. The new protocols were revolutionary in their scope. Advanced artificial intelligence systems would be installed at every colonial checkpoint, capable of identifying military personnel through facial recognition, genetic scanning, and even behavioral pattern analysis. The technology, originally developed for tracking enemy infiltrators during the war against the Mechanical Collective, would now protect humanity's own defenders from exactly this kind of tragic misunderstanding. The three Marines who had intervened, Kim Dae-ho, Park Jin-woo, and Lee Soo-jin, were called forward to receive formal commendations. Their tactical response had been so perfect that military academies across human space were already incorporating it into their training programs. The sight of three warriors receiving honors while standing in the same room as the man they'd been accused of threatening created a powerful image that would be remembered for generations. Admiral Rodriguez, speaking for Earth Command via quantum communication link, announced that the Marines' actions would become the gold standard for protection detail responses. In 4.7 seconds, these three individuals demonstrated everything that makes humanity respected across the galaxy: immediate recognition of injustice, precise action without excessive force, and absolute loyalty to those who have earned it. But the most surprising moment came when General Davis personally addressed Brooks's sentencing. The tribunal had recommended a dishonorable discharge and 5 years in a military prison, a relatively light sentence considering the diplomatic crisis that had resulted from his actions. "I request that this tribunal consider rehabilitation over imprisonment," Davis said, standing to address the judges directly. Officer Brooks made a mistake, born of inadequate training and societal prejudices, that we have all failed to address. Destroying his future serves no one and teaches nothing. The general's recommendation carried enormous weight, especially coming from the victim of Brooks's actions. Davis proposed an alternative sentence: mandatory retraining at the new Colonial Security Academy, followed by supervised service in various multicultural environments where Brooks could learn to see beyond his own limited perspective. "We grow stronger by lifting each other up, not by tearing each other down," Davis stated, his words being broadcast live to billions of viewers across human space. Officer Brooks represents a problem we must solve, not an enemy we must defeat. The tribunal deliberated for only 30 minutes before accepting the general's recommendation. Brooks would undergo a year of intensive retraining, including cultural sensitivity courses, alien relations studies, and psychological counseling to address the underlying biases that had led to his catastrophic error in judgment. As the gavel fell and the formal proceedings ended, the courthouse erupted in discussion among the various species representatives. The Alteran ambassador, who had traveled across the galaxy to witness the tribunal, approached General Davis with all four arms extended in the traditional gesture of respect. "Once again, you show us why humanity deserves its place among the civilized species," the ambassador said, his translated words carrying undertones of relief and renewed trust. "Your wisdom in this matter strengthens our alliance more than any treaty ever could." The courthouse began to empty, but the effects of the tribunal would ripple across the galaxy for years to come, establishing new standards for justice, training, and the treatment of those who risked everything to keep the peace among the stars. 6 months after the tribunal that shook the galaxy, New Terra Colony transformed itself into a beacon of progress and redemption. The new security training center rose from the colony's central district like a monument to human determination, its crystalline walls embedded with memory stones from 17 different worlds, each one representing a species that had fought alongside humanity in the great wars of the Outer Rim. The building itself was a marvel of cooperative engineering. Centauri architects had designed the flowing curves that allowed natural light to illuminate every classroom, while Alteran crystal growers had created the living walls that changed color based on the emotional state of those within. The Silicon Mining Guild had contributed processing cores that could simulate any scenario a security officer might face, from routine cargo inspections to first contact with unknown alien species. General Kwame Davis stood before the main entrance. On dedication day, watching as the final construction robots applied the finishing touches to the memorial wall. The wall displayed the faces and achievements of every human who had died protecting the colonies, their stories told in holographic displays that could be read in over 60 different languages. At the center of the display was a simple message: they served so others could live free among the stars. The ceremony drew visitors from across the galaxy. Massive transport ships descended through the colony's atmospheric shields, carrying delegations from every major species in the Alliance. The peaceful aquatic collective arrived in their water-filled environmental suits, their tentacles glowing with bioluminescent patterns of respect and gratitude. Even the mysterious energy beings of the Void Nebula sent representatives, shimmering, fields of conscious light that communicated through controlled electromagnetic pulses. Ambassador Kethvar of the Altarian Federation had traveled personally from the capital world of New Altair, his four-armed frame impressive even among the diverse crowd of species representatives. His blue-scaled skin bore the ritual scars of a veteran warrior, each mark telling the story of a battle fought to protect the innocent. When he spoke at the dedication ceremony, his words carried the weight of someone who had seen both the worst and best of what intelligent species could accomplish. "This is why we trust humanity," Kethvar announced, his voice amplified by the colony's advanced sound systems so that even the crystalline representatives could absorb the sonic vibrations through their mineral bodies. "When your species makes mistakes, you do not hide from them or blame others. You learn, you grow, and you become stronger. This is the mark of true civilization." The ambassador's speech was broadcast live across the faster-than-light communication networks, reaching billions of viewers on thousands of worlds. Children in the farming colonies of Kepler 442b watched from their classroom screens, while miners in the asteroid belts paused their work to listen on their helmet communicators. The message was clear: humanity had not just recovered from the incident, but had used it as a foundation for something greater. Inside the training center, Sergeant Kim Dae-ho walked through the advanced simulation chambers with his first class of new recruits. His promotion to Chief Training Instructor had come with the responsibility of ensuring that no colonial security officer would ever again mistake friend for foe. The simulation chambers could recreate any environment in human space, from the sulfur storms of the mining worlds to the crystal gardens of the botanical collective's home planets. In those 5 seconds at the spaceport, Kim would tell each new class, his voice steady with the authority of hard-won experience, "We proved what it means to be human. We don't hesitate when justice is at stake. We protect the innocent, defend the defenseless, and stand up for what's right no matter who we face or what the consequences might be." The training program Kim had developed was revolutionary in its scope and depth. New recruits spent 6 months learning not just security protocols, but the history and culture of every species in the Alliance. They studied the heroes of human space through interactive holographic experiences, walking alongside General Davis through his greatest victories and learning from his moments of mercy toward defeated enemies. The most powerful part of the training was the reenactment of the spaceport incident itself. Using advanced holographic technology and neural feedback systems, recruits experienced the event from every perspective: Brooks's panic and confusion, Davis's calm professionalism, and the Marine's split-second decision-making. The emotional impact was profound, teaching lessons that no textbook or lecture could ever convey. Ryan Brooks himself had become an unexpected part of the program. After completing his mandatory retraining, he had volunteered to speak to new recruits about his experience. His testimony was raw and honest, describing the fear and prejudice that had clouded his judgment and nearly destroyed everything humanity had built among the stars. "I saw a threat where none existed," Brooks would tell each class, his voice heavy with the weight of his mistake. "I let fear make my decisions instead of training and respect. Don't be me, be better than me." The impact of the new Terra colony model spread rapidly across human space. Within a year, 17 other colonies had built similar training centers, each one adapted to local conditions, but following the same core principles. The frontier mining station of Proxima 7 created underwater training facilities for officers, who would work with the aquatic collective. The agricultural worlds of the Kepler system built centers that taught the complex social structures of the insectoid hive minds who helped with pollination and crop management. The story of General Davis and the Marines who defended him became more than just history. It became legend. Children across the galaxy learned about it in school, not as a tale of conflict, but as an example of how justice and mercy could transform even the darkest moments into opportunities for growth. The incident that had nearly shattered humanity's reputation instead became proof of their greatest strength. Starship captains would tell the story to their crews during long voyages between the stars. Colony governors would reference it when making difficult decisions about justice and punishment. Even alien species began incorporating the tale into their own cultural traditions, recognizing universal truths about honor, responsibility, and the courage to admit mistakes. New Terra Colony itself became a pilgrimage destination for those seeking to understand what made humanity special among the species of the galaxy. Visitors would tour the training center, study the memorial wall, and walk through the spaceport, where everything had changed in those fateful seconds. The spot where General Davis had been threatened was marked with a simple plaque that read, "Here humanity chose growth over anger, wisdom over vengeance." As ships continued to arrive and depart from the colony's busy spaceport, their passengers carried with them the story of how one moment of crisis had been transformed into a foundation for lasting peace. The galaxy had learned that humanity's greatest weapon was not their military might or technological superiority, but their unwavering commitment to justice and their willingness to lift others up rather than tear them down. The stars themselves seemed to shine brighter over New Terra Colony, as if the universe itself approved of what humanity had accomplished, proving once again that they had earned their place among the stars, not through conquest or domination, but through the courage to always strive to be better than they were before. The end.